And I'm now recording. Good morning. My name is Molly Rozier. My title is Child and Adolescent Health Unit Manager. I sit in the section of Women's, Children's, Family Health in the Alaska Division of Public Health. And I am happy to be hosting this session. This is an introduction to coaching boys into men. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest speaker, who is Brian Hosken. Thank you for joining us, Brian. Brian is a former Anchorage School District Administrator with nearly 30 years of experience overseeing the school activity and athletic programs. He's a third-generation Alaskan, and he earned his bachelor's and his master's. His bachelor's in education and his master's degree in public school administration from the University of Alaska Anchorage. He has coached high school football and basketball for many years and now fulfills the role as Student Services Director at the Alaska School Activities Association, where his primary focus is facilitating the intervention Coaching Boys into Men program. He continues to serve as the National Federation of High School rules interpreter for football while overseeing football officials statewide. He's been married to his wife Marcy for 30 years and has 4 children and 2 grandchildren. Ryan, thank you for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm excited. It's always a great opportunity to share some of the cool things that we do here, and good to see Miss McMorris joining us. I know her from her children who went to West. She just joined in. And since we do have a small group, if at any time you have a question or want to jump in or whatever, feel free to open up. It's much easier again with a small group here. What I have is just a PowerPoint presentation to introduce Coaching Boys into Men. And so what I'd like to go ahead and do is start and share that. By the way, Ms. McMorris, how are your boys doing?
They are doing well. Thank you for asking.
Awesome. Where are they?
They're still in Alaska.
Okay.
My oldest is running his own business. And my younger one, he's working with his dad, trying to figure things out.
Awesome. And what are you doing now?
I'm still counseling.
Okay.
I'm in the middle school right now at HSHWI.
All right, cool. That's over there with Miss Banks, right?
Yes.
How is my friend Miss Banks doing?
She is doing well. It's a little crazy right now, but everything's going pretty good as it can go.
Absolutely. And I now work at the Alaska School Activities Association, and so I'm excited in that statewide we are starting to get back into activities. Students are starting to participate. We have schools that are playing basketball this weekend. Starting tomorrow, we have the state hockey tournament going on out in the valley, and the following week, state ski meet. So I'm just excited. I think it's important for kids to participate, and just the whole idea of recognizing the tremendous impact that sports have on our culture, and especially the lives of young people, and the principles of teamwork and athletics. And so sports, in this case, make an ideal platform to teach healthy relationship skills. And that's what Coaching Boys into Men ultimately does. Bottom line is what is Coaching Boys into Men? And so what Coaching Boys into Men, it's an evidence-based, comprehensive violence prevention program that's designed to inspire coaches to teach their athletes about the importance of respect for themselves, others, and particularly for women and girls. Coaching Boys into Men is a program that comes with strategies, scenarios, and resources needed to talk to boys specifically about healthy and respectful relationships, dating violence, sexual assault, and harassment. Working kind of in the health field and counseling, there are some statistics that when I first started to dive in, I found shocking. And if you're a counselor, you work in the field, you are probably much more aware. But for me, when I initially started, it just surprised me that the prevalence of sexual violence victimization among adults is greater in Alaska than in the U.S. as a whole. Taking a look at just specifically Alaska statistics, and this is from 2017, what jumped out at me was just the number of incidents per 100,000 people in Western Alaska. Western Alaska, just the percentage rate was so large, especially compared to the rest of the state. And of course, when you look at Western Alaska, what we're really looking at is, to some degree, Alaska Natives. And so the percentage of adults who experience childhood sexual abuse by race, ethnicity, the Alaska Native population has the greatest percentage. Looking at the victims of felony sex offense by race and gender, obviously the prevalence of sexual violence victimization is almost 8 times higher among Alaska women compared to men. Again, with Alaska Native being the predominant population of victims. So what we're looking at with Coaching Boys into Men is we're combining the components of on-field court training with the learned off-field court leadership skills. But mirroring those two or matching those two up, the key ingredient truly are the coaches. The coaches are the leaders in Coaching Boys into Men. As influencers, role models, they're in the position to talk with young athletes about healthy relationships. And most coaches truly are not only concerned with wins and losses, but really the development of their athletes into upstanding young men. Most of us, when we look back at our past athletic experiences, don't always remember the wins and losses, but we do remember the influence that coach had on us and how they treated us and the lessons that they taught us. So Coaching Boys into Men builds strong teams and fosters healthy relationships among the athletes and their peers. And it does that by building trust and setting expectations for acceptable behavior. As coaches and as a team, it defines abusive behaviors and teaches healthy relationship skills. And the foundation is that it leverages coaches, their influence as role models to their athletes. So coaches truly have to buy into this program. And I look back at my role when many years ago when I coached basketball and I coached football, and I kind of considered myself maybe a purist, and one who was more concerned sometimes about the winning and losing, and I didn't really understand the potential role and influence that I had as a coach. And that was because I was probably in my young 20s when I started coaching, and I didn't fully understand the role and the influence that I had as a coach. Coaching Boys into Men, it fits into the sports season. And so it's designed as 12 mini training lessons that are just 15-minute discussions per week. And as a coach, you can choose any day of the week. It's not regimented to one particular day. The program itself, what does it look like? It's easily integrated and implemented 15 minutes a week. It's just a discussion time where a coach will lead a discussion on a particular topic. They're the primary leaders of the program, obviously. And eventually, as the program develops, we're looking for it to partnership between schools, other community-based organizations, sport associations. The model itself, in my role primarily, is providing training and assistance for coaches during the season. So once I train the coaches, I'm there to provide additional assistance or other resources that they might need depending upon the particular topic that they might have for that week. There is program materials, some curricular materials that are developed for coaches. We call it the playbook or the card series and other resources. And then at the end, there's a program evaluation. So actually, at the end of a training, what a coach walks away with is what we call the Coaching Boys into Men playbook. It's a 3-part program or curriculum that's developed to take advantage of teachable moments. And as a teacher, those moments pop up frequently. And the same thing as a coach. While we have particular topics that we'd like them to cover in order, there are times where the conversations might bring up other topics that the coach needs to take on and use that as a teachable moment. They're designed as an introduction to the issue with tips for addressing it. This is I could almost call it a canned curriculum. And as a teacher, we often deal with canned curriculums, but what's most important is the personality and the charisma that we bring to that curriculum. So it's not limiting in itself. It's more along the lines of a guide. There is a card series that is, again, what it delineates are the weekly messages into just a 15-minute discussion. And then additionally, there are references and resources that are available to assist coaches during the implementation, and including an overview with some professional referral information. So what I'd like to do real quick is go through what the coach's kit actually looks like. Within the coach's kit, there are 3 prep cards and 12 training cards. Those are the 12 lessons, the mini lessons. The prep cards are to promote and to get the activity started. Then the training cards are 12 weekly lessons. And then along the way, following the lines of athletics, there's a halftime and overtime card that includes strategies to engage your school and communities in your Coaching Boys into Men efforts. So for example, as we start, and this is what it looks like, the preseason speech. And as a coach, it depends on your comfort level, but it gives you kind of an introduction as to what the understanding expectations are for that particular card. And then it gives you a warm-up, which to some degree is like a speech. And as a coach, if you're uncomfortable, you may by all means read it as is. And it's pretty simple and straightforward. And then it has some questions that you would ask the players along the way, and then some discussion points. So as the coach, you facilitate this. And again, your comfort level towards the topic would determine whether or not how in depth or how you covered that particular topic. So first card is a preseason speech. The second card covers personal responsibility, and the personal responsibility helps athletes recognize the consequences of their behavior and how their language and conduct reflect on themselves and others. It also helps them accept responsibility and hold themselves accountable for their action and recognize that they have a responsibility to listen and believe the experiences of women and girls. The third lesson covers insulting language. And in this training, or that particular card, helps athletes recognize that language can be harmful in unexpected ways. It teaches them to refuse to use language that degrades others, including women and girls, and to adapt their language to show respect for others. The fourth card covers disrespectful behavior. And what the training does on that week recognizes how certain behaviors towards women and girls can be hurtful, harmful, or scary, or even abusive. And so what it teaches them to do is refuse to engage in lewd or foul behaviors such as catcalling, sexual innuendos, and harassment. A topic that is foremost, has become foremost, is digital disrespect. And this card is a discussion that allows athletes to recognize that the actions that they take online on their cell phone have real consequences. It encourages them to refuse to participate in abusive or controlling digital behavior, including sending repeated and unwanted text messages, or violating someone's privacy, or pressuring someone for private or embarrassing photos. And it also teaches how to just create a safe and respectful digital space for themselves and others. Understanding consent, and this may be an area where a coach may have difficulty and presenting this topic. And so again, I have resources available to provide either speakers or additional information to help coaches in any one of these particular trainings. But in understanding consent, the coach teaches the athletes to discuss and respect personal boundaries around intimate and sexual activities to create healthy, safe relationships and situations. It also helps them refuse to use pressure, threats, or force in any physical or sexual encounter, as well as actively oppose and prevent incidents of rape, sexual coercion, and assault. Moving on through the trainings here, 1 week they will talk about bragging about their sexual reputation, recognizing that bragging or lying about their sexual reputation is disrespectful and wrong, and that recognizing that spreading stories about someone else's sexual activity can be disrespectful and harmful. And then finally, refusing to spread private information or to speak disrespectful about another person's sexual reputation. This is an interesting one. When aggression crosses the line, I went through this lesson in a little more detail, but teaching athletes to recognize the different degrees of aggression, both on and off the field, and identify when they are becoming aggressive and adjust their behavior when they feel themselves becoming too aggressive. It almost seems like a double-edged sword, because as athletes, we teach them to be aggressive. We actually put girls in skirts and have them spell it on the sideline. And so this is a challenging topic here, is just when and where to draw the line as to how to be aggressive and what is appropriate aggressiveness. Moving along, there's no excuse for relationship abuse. Training helps the athletes to reject the use of pressure or intimidation in their relationships and friendships, refers them back to tools on how to monitor aggression and determine when it crosses the line, and then also to refuse to become abusive or violent in their own relationships. Communicating boundaries is another topic where the athletes learn to recognize the importance of talking with their partner about what's okay or not okay in their relationships, and to initiate conversations about setting boundaries in relationships. Modeling respect and promoting equality, teaching athletes how to treat others how they want to be treated, and modeling respectful behavior towards everyone, including women and girls, in language and actions. And then to also notice and support teammates, friends, respectful behavior. And finally, the last lesson along the way is just the Coaching Boys into Men pledge, just to actively affirm their and the team's collective commitment against relationship abuse. Serves as a public example of respect towards one another, and particularly towards women and girls, and establishing a partnership with women and girls to promote gender equity in their community. It's a lot, but it's, again, the idea is that each week the coach takes a topic and that becomes a focus for the week, eventually completing all 12 sessions. On the good note, there has actually been a study in Sacramento working with over 2,000 athletes and 150 coaches that determined that the program was successful. What they found is that athletes in the program are more likely to report doing something when they witness disrespectful and harmful behavior. They're likely to step in and stop it. They're likely to tell somebody, that whether that's a coach or another adult. They have a greater knowledge of abusive behaviors, such as language and pressure and control, and the trend toward directly reducing those abusive behaviors. Now that we have the program in Alaska, I do have some goals, and the goals that I've kind of established for coaching boys into men here in Alaska is to build on those foundations that were established in Southeast Alaska. Coaching boys into men came to Southeast Alaska several years ago, but and it's kind of traveled to Anchorage a little bit, but after looking at some of the statistics, what I'd like to do is extend CBIM's outreach into Alaska's rural villages, where statistics show that domestic violence and abuse are just outrageous. I also would like to increase the number of trainings throughout Alaska by traveling to central hubs, making the program more accessible and culturally appropriate. Obviously, in the current situation that we're in with COVID-19, that is difficult, but it has been slightly successful through Zoom. I have been able to travel to Bethel and hit some Western Alaska. I was in Fairbanks last fall, and then we did a virtual training through Northwest Alaska coaches. And one of the things I think is important is that we want to align the trainings with the activity seasons. To me, it makes more sense to provide the training for basketball coaches just prior to the basketball season, when they can start the program while it's still fresh in their mind. Also, my role would be to establish direct communications with coaches throughout their season, and that will allow me to kind of monitor, evaluate, and provide assistance with the implementation of Coaching Boys into Men. So that's what we do. And fortunately, we have some wonderful sponsors with Coaching Boys into Men. Futures Without Violence is a program that provides groundbreaking programs, policies, and campaigns that empower individuals to end violence against women and children around the world. The Alaska Council on Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault promotes the prevention of domestic violence and sexual assault for Alaskans victimized or impacted by domestic violence and sexual assault through the statewide system of crisis, and by demanding perpetrator accountability. The Alaska Division of Public Health mission is to protect and promote the health of Alaskans, and the Alaska School Activities Association, as the governing body that sanctions interscholastic competitions, to strengthen student wellness, academic, and social development by advocating equitable participation and fostering participation by all Alaska students. So that's kind of what we do.
Thank you so much, Brian. If anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or type the questions into the chat box. Give it a minute.
I thoroughly enjoy the opportunity to get to talk to coaches. It's kind of along in my wheelhouse anyway, and to be able to train coaches and provide an opportunity to reduce and prevent domestic violence statewide is it's kind of renewed my retirement role here, and so I thoroughly enjoy what I do at the Alaska School Activities Association.
That's great. Thank you, Brian, for your work and your presentation. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now. If anybody needs help finding their next session, I will stay on the line and I can type a Zoom address into the chat box for you. Otherwise, have a good conference. Thank you again, Brian.
Mm-hmm.